Okay, so I don't think I think a lot of people may have left, but there's still plenty of us here. Just having completed four really nice sessions, having attended two each. I thought it was great. A lot of really good and stimulating conversation. I learned a lot, and I hope other people have learned a lot as well. We wanted this to be an outcomes-based workshop. So at the end of each of these sessions, we sort of discussed what outcomes we came up with, what goals we want to set for ourselves in the near future. And so we will be sending at some point, and it won't be for a few weeks, but we'll be sending out a document that sort of summarizes all this in writing. But I would like to invite each of the moderators to sort of go over the outcomes and the discussion from their own session. And it doesn't need to, I would say maybe like 5 minutes or less, 10 minutes, something like that. We've summarized them on that document for you all to look at, but obviously just say what you need to say as well. And I might start by inviting Anbu to talk about it. Are you okay with that?
I'm sure, Brooke. Thank you.
Great.
Hi, everyone. We had a very good discussion. Our participants were from a diverse background as well. So that helped to discuss a lot of things related to public awareness, having successful public awareness campaigns. So one of the topics that was discussed on how celebrity social media influencers have wild animals as pets and how it's difficult to manage as a challenge. Because either a lack of enforcement or the number of views and the fan following as well. So we discussed about different things that could be done, including roping in celebrities or influencers who would speak up against illegal wildlife trade. So that was one of the ideas that was discussed. And we did discuss quite a bit on the visuals and the language that is used for campaigns, how we can use positive things about portraying macaques, for example, how they are social animals, their behavioral complexity, and how unique they are in many ways, and how they respond to each other, different natural behaviors that can be captured, and the importance of having people like good photographers and people who can capture their behavior in the wild. So instead of using negative imagery, positive visuals are very important. That was discussed, and the wording, the language, for example, on aggressive versus defensive macaque. So that was also discussed. This applies mainly for people who are working on managing the social media platforms. There were a lot of ideas that were thrown on. For example, in Malaysia, what's happening, they're going to launch a website with information for public to be more aware about issues related to macaques and other wild animals. And we also discussed about the use of term coexistence instead of harmony. And amongst the other challenges that we discussed, we also spoke about the different cultural traditions that present their own unique challenges, and how different communities needs to be engaged in a different way, whether they are landowners, policymakers, government agency who manage the estate housing authority, of course, land ownership and rights that can come to indigenous people as well. So the language and the strategy that we use to approach these different stakeholders will have to be different. And that is actually a challenge because of the strategy itself can be different. So we did speak quite a bit on positive communication about macaques, and the outcomes were one of the most important one I found quite beneficial. Talking to everyone, working on education, even with children, was to share the resources that all of us have through a common platform, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel. I believe this could resonate with other workshops as well. So this whole biggest benefit of this networking and workshop is to share resources, to learn from each other on what has worked. So we actually look forward to that. and develop a educational package that will highlight the emotional and behavioral capacities of macaques. That will also go a long way in boosting up our education approach for public awareness. And we will have to continue thinking about how macaques will be presented in imagery. So we have to be careful, mindful about how we portray interactions between people and primates. So it is not so much of, while we treat them kind, under certain situations, but we don't want public to think that it's okay to be cute with the animals or very close to the animals. We did speak a lot more about social media, like I mentioned before. So Brooke shared about the important initiative, which is social media against animal cruelty. So group of team on documenting what's happening online on three different platforms, YouTube, TikTok, and Facebook. So this will form the foundation for us to tackle the online problem on illegal wildlife trade, ownership, and portraying wild animals in an inappropriate manner that will negatively impact all our education efforts. So it was a really good discussion, and we look forward to following up on the outcomes as well. So thanks so much to all the participants who contributed to the discussion and shared all their ideas and what has worked at their end. So thanks so much, Bru.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Sharmini's unable to be here right now, so I'm just going to try to summarize. I wasn't actually in that group, but we have a nice summary written, and I'm going to go over that just to let you know what was spoken about there. So one of the first points that was discussed is the human compulsion to feed, which is really quite understandable and pretty universal. Also is the human tendency to vilify macaques. So one of the most important things in trying to solve some conflict issues is human behavior change. Messaging is very important as well. NGOs have to try to test the messaging, which can be just as effective, to find messaging that can be just as effective for locals as it is for foreign tourists, and the different reasons that they feed animals, for example. It's important to consult with local communities using workshops and also with social scientists. I think that was a theme that was discussed in other groups as well. But getting viewpoints from all sorts of different stakeholders is really important. Local considerations are really important, but there are some universals in that most people in urban areas don't really know who to reach out to if they're having difficulties with macaques. Local authorities are mostly apathetic and NGOs are under-resourced, so perhaps a group of experts such as this forum could look to produce some strategies, communication materials, etc., which can be locally tailored for dissemination. This is very much like what we spoke about in Anbu's session as well, so there's a nice common theme there as well. Perhaps by the NGO community coming together to develop effective messaging strategies, we can also in some way overcome the vilification of macaques seen in global media, including misinformation around disease transmission and so on. So the outcomes from this session were to collaborate to produce stakeholder engagement strategies to get buy-in from local urban government authorities covering planning and enforcement, and to use this forum to share successes and probably failures as well, because that's important. Collaborate to develop an input-output model of awareness-raising strategy, obtain input from local groups and social scientists, produce output which covers the broadest, most universal and most effective messaging. Getting this right will not be easy, so take a method of testing and analysis. Within this will be real-world and social media messaging, both helping to change both macaque perceptions and reduce misinformation. And finally, the group agreed that the AFA Macaque Coalition and events like this one are valuable and could be the perfect mechanism to produce and share strategies and materials covering any universal issues. So that is the summary of that. If anybody who is in the session wants to add to that, please feel free. Otherwise, I will invite Harry would you like to go over what we discussed in ours?
Yes, I can do.
Great.
All right, you can hear me, good. So ours was the Macaque Rescue Centre one. We had a little bit of a problem. There wasn't many people in there who had rescue centres or were rescue centre experience, not experience, but had their own rescue centres. So it didn't stop us from coming out of outcomes and summary. So to summarise it, the rescue centres are finding they reach capacity very quickly. It was discussed, but there was no concrete solutions because these are largely out of the scope of the inside the rescue centre itself, which was our focus. Design is really important to welfare and rescue centres, to integrations and to preventing disease transfer from lack of contact. Novel enrichment items, so not just the puzzle feeders you see, but just even introducing sticks and stuff like that is important. Interventions during integrations are sometimes more harmful than any potential interventions. So this was the idea that macaques do get injured and this does happen and they heal very well. So it was to really think hard about when you intervene in a macaque group because of an injury, because you could be causing more stress. Then releases, there's just lots of information needed and there's not much documentation that goes into macaque releases. Vasectomies versus castrations was discussed. And then lack of primate experienced veterinarians in certain parts of the world was also discussed. The outcomes from this was that the Macaque Coalition can make husbandry disease and release protocols via the website and be a forum for people to discuss them. Good realistic release protocols are needed, and this kind of goes against the first one because these might be different to each part of the world, but yeah. Published observations on integrations needed, when, how to intervene, and then the Asia PASA type network via the AFA Macaque Coalition. So a lot of ours and the outcomes was that a lot of the stuff that we're doing within rescue centres is not documented and shared, and we kind of need to rectify that situation with maybe the AFA being an overriding agency within that. I think that's a summary of ours.
Sounds right to me. Malene, do you want to talk about your session?
Unmute. There we go. Sure. And then Sarah can jump in if there's anything that I miss. We had a great session as well with both researchers and practitioners present and people from different countries and working with different macaque species and also with macaque hybrids. So that was very interesting. And what we discussed were there were three major topics. And one was the research into population control measures, so like sterilization, looking into both short-term and long-term effects of sterilization and other population control methods. And there was a lot of experiences shared from Hong Kong and Singapore and Bali. And we all agreed on working together more on this to ensure the research is conducted and to ensure that the welfare is good for the macaques during these processes and also afterwards. And in terms of the long-term implications of these population control measures, we also discussed looking into the genetic impacts and behavioral impacts and the impacts on the demography and just everything, and also behavior with humans, how the interventions can affect that. Then we also discussed the human-macaque interface and how using social scientists, as you also discussed in the other sessions, how that's very important when working with macaques, because we always seem to work more with people in the end when we go into a human-macaque interface. And it's just important to know more about the attitudes and the motivations and the perceptions and the behavior of the people. So asking why and understanding that. And it is important to team up with people that have knowledge and experience in doing this research to ensure that it is scientifically sound and to ensure we get results that are useful. So we discussed creating working groups with social scientists, and I think Sarah will look into that as well. And we also discussed research into pre and post-release monitoring. So doing the monitoring, understanding the research sites and the local human population before doing any releases, and then also monitoring the animals after release. So seeing the successes and failures and the effectiveness of our releases. In general, we talked about, as you did in all the other sessions, I can hear that this is a great forum, and this is a great platform for us to collaborate and work together, and especially to have maybe a Google Drive or something where we can share all the information that we have and share them with each other within all the different aspects of how research can increase macaque welfare. And then we also talked about having different working groups within the different subjects. And we talked about teaming up with other working groups, such as the Section for Human Primate Interactions under the IUCN. And what else? It was we got through quite a lot, I can see. And we talked about the dissemination of our results, how important that is as well. And also then helping each other in terms of choosing the ways of dissemination and how to actually work together with the governments to have them understand both the quantitative and the qualitative information that we've gathered. And yeah, there was a lot of great perspectives from the participants. Do you have anything to add, Sarah?
No, I think you pretty much covered it all. I mean, I think, Brooke, you probably go through our takeaways of our actions from the Macaque Coalition, so I'll defer to you.
Oh, I'm on mute, sorry. Yes, that's great. I just from listening to those summaries and from being in the things, there's release has come up in I think all of them. Release is obviously a subject that we need to talk about more and learn more about, as well as community engagement and population control. Those are the three hot topics of the day, as far as I can tell. We have listed a couple of things that we have to do following this meeting, and one of them is at some point in the future we're going to be sending out and asking to set up smaller working groups on a number of subjects. So contraception methodology in rescue centers and in the field, obviously with different considerations there. We will exchange methodology, and if anyone is undertaking pre and post release monitoring, find out about that. We're gonna collaborate on creating a generally accepted scale for classifying interactions to ensure we are a united voice. Everybody is using the same terms when asking for help from governments, from authorities, or whoever. If we're all using the same terms, that would be very helpful. Yeah, a united definition of terms. We're going to work on engaging social scientists to assist with field research and public awareness. Practitioners directory to all working in the field, including students and volunteers who might want to be involved in researching macaque issues. We have like a fledgling form of that available someplace on our website, but it is in development, so we need to work on that. Resources, we're going to host resources on release, husbandry, disease protocol, public awareness, and share resources to be used in other languages, like cartoons, for example, to help raise public awareness. And I'm sure plenty more, but this is what we have listed so far. We will, again, be sending out a summary of everything before too long, and we can converse by email or whatever. And so we intend to hold another one of these events in December, I think, tentatively December 10th. It's not a firm date yet. We've started speaking to a few different people already about who can talk there, and Tang, who has been working behind the scenes today, is one of the people who's slated to talk, so we're excited about that. Just thank you all for coming, and thank you very much for the people from AFA Coalition, Animals Asia Foundation, and World Federation for Animals who are working behind the scenes to, make everybody get into the right rooms, taking notes, making sure we got everything recorded. If nobody has anything else to add, which you are welcome to do if you have, I will say goodbye, and thank you for coming.